My parents forgot I existed for 5 years, treated me like I was dead. Then my aunt posted a photo of my luxury yacht online. Moments later, Dad texted, "Sell the boat. Your brother's debt is due." My name is Rowan Reynolds. I am 29 years old. And 5 years ago, my family erased me like I never existed. To understand why I left, you have to understand the dinner table. It sounds like a small thing, doesn't it? A family dinner. But in the Reynolds household, the dinner table was a battlefield where the casualties were silence and neglect. I remember the specific texture of that night. It was a Tuesday in Grand Rapids, Michigan. The air inside the house was stale, smelling of overcooked meatloaf and that distinct, dusty scent of old carpet that my mother, Marilyn, refused to replace. I was standing in the kitchen, flipping burgers on a griddle that was sizzling too loudly. The grease popped onto my hand, burning the skin, but I didn't flinch. I was used to the sting. In the dining room, the television was blaring. My father, Silas, was glued to a baseball game. He was a large man, taking up too much space at the head of the table, his grunts at the pitcher the only contribution he made to the household atmosphere. My mother was fluttering around the table, not really doing anything useful, just chasing shadows and making sure my brother's glass was full. And then there was Preston. My brother, 2 years older than me, sat there with his phone propped up against the napkin holder. He was bragging about his new online toy store. He claimed it had hit $2,000 in sales that day. He was loud, obnoxious, and demanding. "Mom, did you see the engagement metrics?" Preston asked, talking with his mouth full. "I'm telling you, this drop-shipping thing is the future. I'm going to be a millionaire by 30. "That's amazing, sweetie," Mom cooed, piling more fries onto his plate. "Silas, did you hear your son? $2,000. Dad didn't look away from the TV. "Good. Pass the ketchup." I cleared my throat. I had been waiting for a lull in the noise for 20 minutes. I was holding a piece of paper in my apron pocket, my promotion letter. "I got some news too," I said. My voice sounded small in the cavernous room. "I got the promotion at the logistics firm. Senior coordinator. They want to send me to Key West to manage the regional intake." Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. For a second, I thought they were processing it. I thought maybe, just maybe, Dad would turn his head. Maybe Mom would smile. Then, Preston tapped his screen. "Ugh, the lighting in here is terrible. Mom, Kayla is breathing too loud. I need quiet for this live stream. I'm about to go live for the unboxing." Mom finally looked up, but she didn't look at me with pride. She looked at me with annoyance. "Rowan, please," she hissed, waving her hand at me as if shooing away a fly. "Preston needs a professional environment. Can you take your dinner to the kitchen? You're distracting him." I stood there, the spatula dripping grease onto the floor. It wasn't anger that hit me. It wasn't sadness. It was a cold, hollow realization. I wasn't their daughter. I was a background character in the movie of Preston's life. I was a non-player character. "I got a promotion," I repeated, quieter this time. "I'm moving to Florida," Dad muttered. "Preston, ask your mother for the salt." They hadn't heard me. Or worse, they had heard me, and they simply didn't care. I looked at them. This tableau of dysfunction. The golden child, the enabler mother, and the narcissist father. They were a closed loop. There was no room for me in that circle. I turned off the stove. I left the burgers half-cooked. I walked out of the kitchen, past the dining room where Preston was already shouting his intro to an audience of 12 bots. I walked up the stairs, my heart beating a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. I didn't cry. I think I had run out of tears years ago. I just felt done. That night, the house was quiet, but it was a heavy quiet, the kind that presses against your ears. I was in my room, staring at the ceiling, when a knock came at the door. It wasn't Mom coming to apologize. It wasn't Dad coming to ask about the job. It was my Aunt Beatrice. Aunt Beatrice was my father's sister, but she was nothing like him. She was sharp, elegant, and saw everything. She had come over for dessert, arriving just after I had retreated upstairs. She must have seen the aftermath. She opened the door and stood there in the hallway light. She didn't come in. She just leaned against the doorframe, her arms crossed, holding a glass of wine. "You're leaving," she stated. It wasn't a question. I sat up. "How did you know?" "Because I watched them down there," she said, her voice low. "Preston is talking about buying a Tesla with money he doesn't have, and your parents are nodding like bobbleheads. They didn't even mention your name, Rowan." Not once. I looked down at my hands. I got a promotion. Key West. Beatrice nodded slowly. Good. Go. She took a sip of her wine, her eyes locking onto mine. Listen to me, kid. They will never see you. You could become the president of the United States, and they would ask you why you didn't help Preston with his campaign. You are the scapegoat. He is the golden child. That dynamic doesn't change until you break the board. It feels wrong to just leave, I whispered, without saying goodbye properly. They didn't say hello to you for 10 years, Beatrice said, her words hitting harder than any scream. Build your own life. Because if you stay here, you'll wither. You'll become just like your mother, a shadow chasing a spotlight that isn't yours. She walked over, placed a hand on my shoulder, and squeezed. It was the only physical affection I had received in months. Pack tonight. Leave before sunrise. Don't look back. When she left, I felt a surge of adrenaline. Beatrice was right. I pulled a single duffel bag from my closet. I didn't pack everything. I didn't want everything. I packed 3 pairs of jeans, my work shirts, my laptop, and the $200 cash I had hidden in a hollowed-out book. I looked around the room. The posters on the wall, the trophies from high school debate club that were gathering dust, they felt like artifacts from a stranger's life. I was shedding a skin. At 4 in the morning, the house was silent. I crept downstairs. The floorboards creaked, and I froze, terrified that Dad would wake up and yell at me for making noise. But nothing stirred. His snoring from the master bedroom was a rhythmic, indifferent rumble. I walked into the kitchen. The dirty dishes from Preston's celebratory meal were still in the sink. Of course, they expected me to wash them in the morning. I took my house key off my ring. I placed it on the counter, right next to the unwashed ketchup stain. I didn't write a note. What would I say? I exist. They knew that, and they chose to ignore it. A note implies a conversation, and we hadn't had a conversation in years. I opened the back door. The cool Michigan air hit my face, smelling of dew and freedom. I stepped out, closed the door softly, and walked toward the bus station. I didn't own a car. Preston had needed the family car for his image, so I had always taken the bus. As I walked down the driveway, I waited for the regret to hit. I waited for the urge to turn around. But all I felt was the weight of the duffel bag on my shoulder and the terrifying, exhilarating vastness of the world in front of me. The bus ride to Florida took 28 hours. 28 hours of cramping legs, smelling the unwashed hair of the passenger in front of me, and watching the American landscape shift from gray Midwest cornfields to the lush, humid green of the South. I didn't turn my phone on for the first 10 hours. I was afraid. I was afraid of the angry texts. I was afraid of Mom leaving sobbing voicemails asking how I could abandon the family when Preston needed help with his inventory organization. When we crossed the border into Georgia, I finally powered it on. I braced myself. Nothing. No missed calls. No texts. No voicemails. I frowned. Maybe the signal was bad. I checked the bars. Full LTE. I opened our family group chat, titled Reynolds Family Success. It was gone. I blinked, thinking it was a glitch. I refreshed the app. Then I saw the notification at the bottom of the archived thread history. You were removed from the group. My chest tightened. I went to my mother's contact. I typed a simple message. I'm safe. I'm heading to Florida. Message not delivered. The little red exclamation point mocked me. She had blocked me. I checked Dad's number. Blocked. I checked Preston's. Blocked. I sat there in the dim light of the bus, surrounded by strangers, and felt a coldness that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. It wasn't just that they were mad. Anger implies passion. Anger implies they cared enough to be upset. This was erasure. They had deleted me by breakfast. I sat on the edge of the sagging mattress. I was 24 years old. I was alone in a strange city. My family had treated my departure like taking out the trash. I pulled out my phone again. I scrolled through my contacts. Aunt Beatrice was still there. I hesitated, then typed, I'm out. I'm in Key West. The 3 dots appeared immediately. Beatrice, good. Breathe, kid. You're free. Don't let the silence scare you. The silence is your foundation. I stared at that message for a long time. Then, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went to the bathroom, looked at myself in the cracked mirror, at the dark circles under my eyes, the pale skin, the fear, and I spoke out loud. My name is Rowan. I am here. I exist. I washed my face. The water was cold. When I looked up, the fear was still there, but something else was growing behind it. A hard, cold resolve. They wanted me to be invisible? Fine. I would disappear. But I would build something so big that one day, my shadow would cast over their entire tiny world. The first month in Key West was a lesson in humility. The logistics job I had been promised? It turned out to be part-time, initially, pinning a background check that took forever. The pay was decent, but not enough to cover a deposit on an apartment in a tourist town. So, I needed a second job. Immediately, I walked the docks at the marina. The sun was relentless. It wasn't the polite sunshine of Michigan. This was an aggressive, blinding heat that sought to melt you into the pavement. I saw a flyer stapled to a wooden post near a bait shop. Hand needed. Dawn Tides Marina. $10 an hour. No experience required. Ask for Elias. I walked down the pier. Dawn Tides wasn't the fancy marina where the mega yachts docked. It was the working marina. The boats here had rust streaks and smelled of diesel and fish guts. I found Elias in a small, air-conditioned shack that served as the office. He was a man carved out of driftwood, leathery skin, a white beard stained yellow with tobacco, and eyes that looked like they had stared at the horizon for too long. "I'm here for the job," I said, trying to sound tougher than I felt. Elias looked me up and down. I was wearing my office slacks and a blouse that was already sticking to my back with sweat. "You ever scrub a hull, girl?" he asked, his voice sounding like gravel in a mixer. "No, sir. But I can learn." "It ain't about learning. It's about enduring. The chemicals burn. The sun burns. The tourists are idiots." He spat into a cup. "Grab a bucket. Boat on slip 4 needs the head unclogged and the deck scrubbed. If you're still here in 2 hours, you're hired." I walked to slip 4. It was a fishing charter boat covered in gull droppings and salt. I stripped off my nice shoes. I rolled up my slacks. I grabbed the stiff bristled brush and the bucket of harsh soap. For the next 4 hours, I scrubbed. My hands blistered. The bleach water splashed onto my legs, stinging every micro cut I didn't know I had. I unclogged a marine toilet that smelled like the devil's armpit. I hauled bags of ice that weighed 40 pounds each. When I walked back to the shack, I was shaking. I was dehydrated, sunburnt, and I smelled terrible. Elias tossed me a faded blue t-shirt with Dawn Tides printed on it. "You missed a spot on the port rail. Fix it tomorrow. Start time is 5 a.m. That was my life. By day, I navigated spreadsheets at the logistics firm, tracking shipping containers. By early morning and late evening, I was a dock rat. I moved out of the motel and into a studio apartment above a dive bar. The walls were paper thin. Every night, the bass from the live band downstairs shook my bed frame. Sweet Home Alabama became the soundtrack of my insomnia. But I saved. God, did I save. I ate ramen noodles reinforced with frozen vegetables. I drank tap water. I didn't go out. I didn't make friends. I became a machine. My routine was sleep, work, scrub, work, repeat. Elias was hard on me. He yelled when I tied a cleat hitch wrong. He berated me when I let a fuel line drag in the water. But unlike my father, Elias's criticism had a purpose. He wasn't trying to make me feel small. He was trying to make me competent. "The ocean doesn't care about your feelings, Rowan," he shouted one morning when I fumbled a rope during a squall. "It only cares if you hold the line. Hold the damn line." I held the line. My hands grew calluses. My skin turned a deep, golden bronze. My muscles hardened. One afternoon, 6 months in, Elias found me reorganizing his supply closet. I had labeled everything, created an inventory sheet, and tracked his fuel usage to find where he was losing money. He looked at the clipboard I handed him. He squinted at the numbers. "You saved me $400 this month just by tracking the oil filters?" he asked. "Yes, sir. You were double ordering." He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time. "You're too smart to be scrubbing toilets, kid. Tomorrow, you're in the office. You're handling the scheduling for the charters." It was a small victory, but in the silence of my life, it sounded like a trumpet blast. I was useful. I was seen. 2 years passed. The silence from Michigan hardened into a fact of life, like gravity. I avoided social media on my main phone. But late at night, in the glow of my laptop screen, I had a secret vice. I had created a fake Facebook account under the name Jane Doe with a picture of a sunset. I used it to watch them. It was a form of emotional self-harm, I knew that. But I couldn't stop. I needed to know if they missed me. I needed to see the hole I had left behind. But there was no hole. That was the horror of it. I clicked on Preston's profile. It was public, of course. His toy store had pivoted. Now he was a lifestyle entrepreneur. The photos were flashy. Him standing next to a leased BMW. Him holding a stack of cash, probably rent money, to his ear like a phone. One post from my mother caught my eye. It was dated 6 months after I left. A photo of Mom and Dad standing in front of a warehouse. Dad had his arm around Preston. The caption read, "So proud of our genius son. Just signed the lease on his new distribution center. We mortgaged the house to help him achieve his dreams because that's what family does. Hashtag blessed, hashtag Reynolds Empire." I stared at the screen. They mortgaged the house. The house I grew up in. The house where Dad told me we couldn't afford to help me with college tuition, forcing me to work 2 jobs while taking night classes. They had bet the farm on Preston. I scrolled down to the comments. "Aunt Linda, what a great family. Where's Rowan these days? Haven't seen her." Mom's reply, "Oh, you know Rowan. She's off doing her own thing somewhere. We don't hear much. Focus is on Preston right now. Doing her own thing. Not we miss her. Not we are worried. Just a dismissal." I felt a heat rising in my chest that wasn't from the Florida sun. It was a cold, blue flame of rage. They were erasing me while simultaneously drowning themselves to prop up Preston's delusions. I closed the laptop. I didn't cry. I didn't throw things. I opened my banking app. Balance, $28,450. It was my FU fund. Every dollar represented a toilet I had scrubbed, a fuel tank I had filled, a weekend I had spent working instead of partying. I looked around my small apartment. It was clean. It was quiet. It was mine. Focus is on Preston, I whispered to the empty room. Fine. Watch him burn. Watch me rise. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't just going to be an employee anymore. I was going to be an owner. I started studying for my captain's license. I bought books on marine mechanics. I learned how to tear down a diesel engine and put it back together. I stopped being a victim of their neglect and started being a student of their failure. They were betting on flash. I would bet on substance. Every Sunday morning, my phone would buzz with a text from Aunt Beatrice. "Beatrice, still breathing?" Me, "Still breathing. Got a raise." "Beatrice, good. Keep climbing. Don't look down." She was the tether, the only proof that I came from somewhere. But even she didn't know the full extent of my plan. I was going to build walls so high that when they finally looked up, they would break their necks trying to see the top. The turning point came in the form of Hurricane Elsa. It wasn't a catastrophic Category 5, but it was nasty. The winds were howling at 70 miles per hour, and the storm surge was threatening to crest the seawall. Most of the dockhands had evacuated or were hunkered down in bars. Elias was old, his hip was bad, and he couldn't run the lines fast enough. I was in the office when the radio crackled. "Slip 6 is breaking loose. The Sea Star is going to smash into the fuel dock." That was Elias's biggest earner. If that boat went down, his insurance premiums would bankrupt him. I didn't think. I grabbed a rain slicker and ran out into the gale. The rain was horizontal, stinging like needles. The wind almost knocked me off the pier. I saw Elias struggling with a heavy braided line, slipping on the wet wood. "Get back," he yelled when he saw me. "It's too dangerous. Give me the line." I screamed over the wind. I jumped onto the heaving deck of the Sea Star. The boat was bucking like a wild horse. I scrambled to the bow, slipping, bruising my knees. I grabbed the loose line, wrapped it around the cleat, and hauled with everything I had. My muscles screamed. The boat pulled back, the rope burning my palms, even through gloves. I managed to secure it. Then I ran to the stern and threw out a secondary anchor to stabilize the drift. For 3 hours, Elias and I fought the storm. We secured 12 boats. We doubled the lines. We put out extra fenders. When the winds finally died down to a manageable gust, we were soaked, shivering, and exhausted. We sat on the floor of the shack, drinking lukewarm coffee. Elias looked at me. He looked at my bloody hands. "You're crazy," he grunted. "I wasn't going to let the fleet sink," I said, my teeth chattering. He was silent for a long time. Then he stood up, groaned as his hip popped, and went to his desk. He pulled out a bottle of rum and poured 2 shots. "I'm getting too old for this," he said. "I can't run the docks and the books anymore. I need a director of operations." I looked up. "You want to hire someone?" "I'm looking at her," he said. "You run the logistics. You manage the crew. You handle the clients. I just drive the boat when I feel like it." That's a big step up, Elias. You earned it. And I'm putting you on the commission structure. 5% of all charter revenue. My heart stopped. 5%. That was serious money. That was buy a house money. Deal, I said, shaking his hand. Good, he said. Now go home and dry off. You smell like wet dog. I walked home in the rain, feeling 10 feet tall. I had saved the fleet. I had secured my future. I checked my phone. It was Sunday. Beatrice, storm looks bad on the news. You okay? Me. Better than okay. I just became the director. Beatrice, that's my girl. They don't deserve to know, but I'm drinking a toast to you right now. I slept for 14 hours that night. When I woke up, I transferred another $5,000 into my account. I was halfway to my goal. The boat fund was no longer a dream. It was a mathematical inevitability. Hey everyone, quick pause. If you are enjoying Rowan's journey from being erased to building an empire, please hit that like button right now. It really helps the channel. Also, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the ending. And I want to know, where are you listening from? Leave a comment with the name of your city below. Let's see how far this story travels. Okay, back to the story. Year 3. I was now the director of operations for Dawn Tides. I wore a polo shirt with my name embroidered on it. I managed a team of 6 dock hands, guys who used to whistle at me, now jumping when I gave an order. But I didn't want to work for Elias forever. I wanted my own keel in the water. I found her in a salvage yard in Marathon, about an hour north. She was a 40-foot cruiser, once a beauty, now a disaster. She had been slammed against a piling during a hurricane. The fiberglass on the starboard side was shattered. The interior was gutted by water damage. The engines were seized. The broker, a greasy guy named Mitch, laughed when I asked the price. That thing? It's a planter box, lady. Scrap value is maybe 10 grand. I'll give you 8,000 cash, I said. As is. Mitch blinked. You know the engines are dead, right? I know. Sold. I signed the papers. I wired the money from my boat fund. I owned a yacht. Well, I owned a very expensive pile of trash that looked vaguely like a yacht. For the next 18 months, I ceased to have a social life. My life became a binary existence. Day job at the marina, night shift on my boat. I rented a space in the dry dock. I bought a respirator mask, an industrial sander, and gallons of epoxy. I learned the intimate language of restoration. I learned that fiberglass dust itches for days, no matter how many showers you take. I learned how to rewire a 12-volt electrical system. I learned how to bleed a diesel injector. There were nights I sat in the stripped-out hull, crying from exhaustion. My friends, what few I had, were out at bars, dating, living. I was covered in grease, eating a cold sandwich, talking to a broken engine. Come on, I'd whisper to the starboard engine. Turn over. Don't be like my family. Work with me. One night, about 14 months in, I turned the key. The starboard diesel coughed. Then it sputtered. Then, with a roar that shook the hull, it caught life. Dark smoke billowed out the exhaust, but the hum was music. I sat back on the greasy floorboards and laughed until my stomach hurt. I named her the Resilience. I stenciled the letters on the stern myself. It wasn't just a name, it was a statement. This boat was built from the wreckage, just like me. By the end of year 4, she was in the water. She wasn't new, but she was beautiful. I had redone the interior with teak wood I salvaged from another wreck. I sewed the cushions myself. She was gleaming white, polished to a mirror shine. I moved out of my apartment and onto the boat. I slept in the master cabin, rocked gently by the tide. I was no longer just Rowan the coordinator. I was Captain Reynolds. Success has a smell, and in a small marina town, it smells like blood to sharks. When I launched the Resilience as a private charter, offering high-end sunset cruises and eco-tours, I wasn't just competing, I was disrupting. Enter Kieran. Kieran owned Blue Water Charters. He was a trust fund kid who had bought a fleet of 3 boats with daddy's money. He was loud, arrogant, and hated that a woman who used to scrub his decks, was now parking a pristine 40-foot yacht next to his. He started small, bad-mouthing me to the hotel concierges who referred guests. Don't send them to Reynolds, he'd say. She's operating a salvage wreck. Unsafe. Then he got nastier. I'd come to the dock and find my fresh water hose cut, or a dead fish left on my welcome mat. I didn't retaliate with pranks. I retaliated with logistics. I knew Kieran's weakness. He was lazy. He overcharged, his captains were rude, and his booking system was archaic. I hired a developer to build a seamless booking app. I partnered with the best caterers in town to offer champagne and lobster, packages that Kieran couldn't match on price. I trained my crew. I had hired 2 deckhands now to treat every guest like royalty. My reviews on TripAdvisor skyrocketed. 5 stars. Captain Rowan is amazing. Best sunset in Key West. The boat is spotless. Kieran started bleeding money. Then he tried to sue me. He claimed I was infringing on his trade routes, which is not a thing in the ocean, and tried to block my slip lease. I needed a lawyer. That's how I met Harrison. Harrison was a maritime attorney. He was sharp, dressed in linen suits, and had a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes until you proved you weren't an idiot. I walked into his office, placed a folder on his desk. "This is Kieran's lawsuit," I said. "And this is a record of every time his boats have violated the wake zone speed limits, documented by my dash cams. I want you to bury him." Harrison looked through the file. He raised an eyebrow. "You kept logs?" "I keep logs of everything," I said. Harrison smiled, and this time it was real. "I like your style, Ms. Reynolds. Let's make him regret he ever learned to spell litigation." We crushed Kieran. Not only did the lawsuit get thrown out, but Harrison filed a counterclaim for harassment and interference with business. Kieran had to settle. He had to publicly retract his statements about my safety record. Harrison and I celebrated with dinner on the resilience. "You're a terrifying woman, Rowan," Harrison said, raising a glass. "I had to be," I replied. "I didn't have a safety net. I had to weave one out of barbed wire." Harrison looked at me curiously. "You never talk about your family. Where are they?" "Michigan," I said, taking a sip of wine. "And as far as they know, I'm dead. Or flipping burgers. I prefer it that way." "Smart," he said. "Keep your assets shielded. If they ever find out you have this." He gestured to the yacht. "They'll come for it." "They can try," I said. Year 5. The business was booming. I had acquired a second vessel, a smaller center console for fishing trips. I had 3 captains working for me. My bank account had 6 figures. It was time for Aunt Beatrice to see what I had built. She flew down on a Tuesday. I picked her up in a rental convertible. When she saw me, tan, fit, wearing tailored shorts and a crisp white shirt, she teared up. "Look at you," she whispered, hugging me tight. "You look solid." "I am solid, Aunt B." I drove her to the marina. When I walked her down the dock and stopped in front of the Resilience, her jaw dropped. "This is yours. Paid off. No mortgage. She's all mine." We spent the afternoon cruising the reef. We drank wine on the flybridge. It was perfect, but I knew Beatrice had news. She had that look. "Tell me," I said, as the sun began to dip. Beatrice sighed. "It's bad, Rowan. Preston, he's an idiot." "I know that." "What did he do?" "He got into crypto. Then he pivoted to some inventory scheme. He owes suppliers about $52,000. He owes credit cards another $30,000. He's drowning. And Mom and Dad, they are in denial. They took out a second mortgage on the house to pay his bail last year. Don't ask. And now they are tapping their retirement funds to keep his business afloat. They think he's one big sale away from saving them all." I felt a flash of pity, but I crushed it. "They chose him." "They did," Beatrice agreed. "And now they are miserable. Your dad is angry all the time. Your mom just cries and says she doesn't understand why God is testing them." She looked at me. "They need a wake-up call, Rowan." "What do you mean?" Beatrice pulled out her phone. "You've been a ghost for 5 years. They think you're failing because that fits their narrative. If you're failing, they were right to ignore you. But if you're winning, it destroys their worldview." I finished. "Exactly." She held up the camera. "Let me take a picture. You, on the bow of your yacht. Looking like the queen you are. I'll post it. I'll tag you." I hesitated. "It will open the door. They'll come sniffing." "Let them," Beatrice said, her eyes flashing. "You're not the scared little girl in the hallway anymore. You're the captain. Sometimes, the only way to banish a ghost is to turn on the floodlights." I looked at the water. I looked at the Resilience. I looked at my hands, strong, capable hands that had built this life from scrap. "Do it," I said. I stood on the bow. I didn't smile like a model. I stood with my hands in my pockets, looking at the horizon, the wind in my hair, the Resilience gleaming white beneath me. Beatrice snapped the photo. "Caption?" she asked. I thought about it. "Just the facts." She typed. "My niece Rowan Reynolds did what no one thought possible. Owns her own yacht now. Built it all herself. Queen of Key West. She hit post. Now, Beatrice said, pouring more wine. We wait. The reaction was instant. Beatrice had a lot of friends in Grand Rapids. Nosy church ladies, old neighbors, cousins. Within an hour, the post had 50 likes. Then 100. The comments started rolling in. Cousin Jenny. Is that Rowan? OMG, she looks rich. Mrs. Gable. Neighbor, I thought she was struggling. That boat is huge. Uncle Gary, wow. Just wow. Then, the flying monkeys arrived. These are the family members who do the narcissist's bidding. Cousin Sarah sent a DM. Hey Rowan. Long time no see. Your dad says he's been trying to reach you. You should call him. I ignored it. Then, around 8 p.m., my phone buzzed. It wasn't a text from a contact. It was a message request on Messenger from Silas Reynolds. My heart hammered against my ribs. My father. The man who passed the ketchup while I announced I was leaving. I opened the message. Silas, saw the picture on Facebook. You're alive. No, I love you. No, I miss you. Just a statement of fact. A second message popped up, the 3 dots dancing ominously. Silas, we need to talk. Call me immediately. Family matter. I stared at the screen. The audacity. 5 years of silence. And he orders me to call him like I'm a teenager who stayed out past curfew. I didn't reply. I took a screenshot and sent it to Beatrice, who was sleeping in the guest cabin. A minute later, Beatrice texted back from the other room. Don't answer. Let him stew. Monday morning, the post had gone viral in our small hometown circle. It had over 300 likes. My phone started ringing. Unknown number. Area code 616, Grand Rapids. I let it go to voicemail. Then another call. And another. Finally, a voicemail appeared. I pressed play, putting it on speaker so Harrison, who had stopped by for coffee, could hear. Voice of Silas. Rowan. It's your father. Pick up the phone. We know you have money now. Your mother is sick with worry. We are in a situation. You need to call us. We are family. Harrison whistled. He played this sick mom card and the we know you have money card in the same breath. Impressive efficiency. He's not worried. I said, my voice steady. He smells blood. What do you want to do? Harrison asked. I can draft a cease and desist letter. Harassment? No, I said. Not yet. Rowan, they are going to escalate. I know, but I need them to say it. I need to hear them ask for it. I need to know for sure that I was right to leave. Tuesday. The text shifted from demanding to manipulative. Mom, via a new number, honey, please. I haven't slept. Preston is in trouble. He needs his big sister. We are looking up flights. That stopped me cold. We are looking up flights. They weren't just calling. They were coming. They were invading my sanctuary. I felt a wave of panic, the old childhood fear of being scolded. But then I looked around the deck of the Resilience. This wasn't their kitchen. This was my ship. Maritime law applied here. And on this ship, I was the ultimate authority. I replied for the first time. Me, do not come. I am busy. The response was immediate. Dad, too late. We land tomorrow at 2 p.m. Meet us at the marina. We need to settle this. Settle what? My success. Their failure? I looked at Harrison. They're coming tomorrow. Harrison cracked his knuckles. I'll make sure security is on standby. And I'll be here. No, I said. I need to face them alone. But stay close. The waiting was the hardest part. Wednesday morning felt like it dragged on for a year. I prepped the boat like I was preparing for a hurricane. I locked the liquor cabinet. I secured the confidential logbooks in the safe. I told my crew to take the afternoon off. I stood on the dock, pacing. Luna, the stray dog I had adopted who lived on the marina, trotted beside me, sensing my anxiety. It's okay, girl, I muttered. Just some old ghosts visiting. At 2:30 p.m., a taxi pulled up to the marina gate. I watched them get out. It was shocking how much they had aged. Dad, Silas, looked smaller. His shoulders were slumped, his hair completely white. But he still walked with that arrogant, chest-out stride of a man who thinks he owns the sidewalk. Mom, Marilyn, looked frail. Her purse was clutched to her chest like a shield. She was looking around nervously, eyes darting at the luxury yachts. And Preston looked like a mess. He was wearing a designer t-shirt that was too tight, expensive sunglasses, and dragged a Louis Vuitton suitcase that looked scuffed. He didn't look like a millionaire. He looked like a guy who was trying to convince you he was a millionaire while asking to borrow $5. They walked down the pier. I stood at the end of the gangway to the Resilience, arms crossed. I was wearing my captain's uniform, Navy blue polo, khaki shorts, boat shoes. I looked professional. I looked immovable. Dad saw me first. He waved, a big, fake, hearty wave. "Rowan, there she is," he boomed. He acted like we were old pals. Like he hadn't ignored my existence for half a decade. They reached the boat. Dad moved to step onto the gangway. "Stop," I said. My voice was calm, but it carried. Dad froze, 1 foot in the air. "Excuse me." "Private vessel," I said. "Invitation only. Shoes off if you want aboard." Preston scoffed. "Seriously, Rowan? We flew all the way here. It's hot. I didn't ask you to fly here," I said. "Shoes off. Or turn around." Dad turned red. I saw the vein in his neck bulge, the same vein I used to fear when I was 10. "Now listen here, young lady." "Captain," I corrected. "It's Captain Reynolds. And this is my property. You play by my rules, or you leave." Mom put a hand on Dad's arm. "Silas, please. Just take them off." Grumbling, Dad kicked off his loafers. Preston sighed dramatically and unlaced his expensive sneakers. Mom slipped off her sandals. "Fine," Dad snapped. "We're aboard." I stepped aside. "Touch nothing. Sit in the cockpit. Do not enter the cabin." They filed onto the boat. I watched their eyes. Dad was calculating the value. I could see him doing the math. 40 feet, twin diesels, teak deck. Preston was jealous. Pure, unadulterated envy. He ran a hand along the polished rail, looking for a flaw, for a scratch, for anything to criticize. "Nice dinghy," Preston sneered. "Did you rent it?" "I own it," I said. "Paid in full. Unlike your inventory." Preston flinched. They sat on the white leather cushions in the cockpit. I didn't offer them water. I didn't offer them food. I remained standing, leaning against the helm station, looking down at them. So I said, "You're here." "What?" Dad cleared his throat. He tried to put on his patriarch face. "We're here because we're a family, Rowan. And families help each other. We saw you're doing well. Very well. And your brother is in a tight spot," Dad said. "A temporary cash flow issue. The global market is volatile." "He's broke," I translated. "He's illiquid," Preston shouted. "My assets are tied up in stock." "You have $52,000 in debt to suppliers," I said coldly. "And $30,000 to Visa. Aunt B told me." Silence. Mom started to cry. Soft, practiced tears. "Rowan, honey, please. They're going to take his business. They're going to sue us. We co-signed the loans." "We?" I asked. "Your father and I," Mom sobbed. "If he defaults, they take our house." I looked at them. The picture was complete. They hadn't come to reconnect. They had come to harvest. I was just a resource to be tapped to save the golden child. Mom's tears were falling onto my teak deck. I fought the urge to hand her a tissue. That was the old Rowan, the fixer, the pleaser. Captain Reynolds just watched. "So," I said, keeping my voice flat, "let me get this straight. You ignored me for 5 years. You removed me from the family chat. You didn't call on my birthday. You didn't call when I got promoted. You didn't call when I bought this boat. But now that the bank is coming for your house because of his mistakes, you flew down here. We didn't ignore you." Dad blustered. "We gave you space. You left us, remember? You walked out." "I walked out because I was invisible," I said. "And you proved it by never looking for me." "That's the past," Preston interrupted, waving his hand dismissively. "Who cares about the past? We're talking about the future. My future." He stood up and started pacing the small cockpit, looking manic. "Here's the plan, sis," Preston said, putting on his salesman voice. "I've been thinking. You have this boat operation. It's cute, but it doesn't scale. I have the branding expertise. We merge." I blinked. "We what?" "We merge," Preston said, gesturing grandly. "I bring the Reynolds lifestyle brand. You provide the assets, the boats. We leverage the equity in this yacht to pay off my temporary debts, and then we pivot to a luxury lifestyle brand. Influencer cruises. Merch. I'll be the CEO, obviously, since I have the vision. You can handle the boat stuff. Operations." I stared at him. The delusion was breathtaking. It was almost art. "You want me to sell my equity," I said slowly. "To pay your debts, and then work for you?" "Partner with me," Preston corrected. 51 to 49 split. I need controlling interest for the investors. I looked at Dad. "And you support this?" Dad nodded solemnly. "It makes sense, Rowan. Preston has a head for business. You're good with your hands. Obviously, but you need someone to manage the big picture. Plus, it keeps the money in the family. The money, I repeated. It's a win-win, Dad said. You help your brother, we save the house, and you get to be part of a bigger empire. And if I say no? The air on the boat changed. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Dad's face hardened. The nice guy mask slipped. You can't say no, Dad said darkly. We raised you. We fed you. You owe us. This boat, this success, it came from the foundation we gave you. You gave me nothing, I said. I left with $200. We gave you life. Mom wailed. How can you be so selfish? Your brother is suffering. He's suffering because he's incompetent, I said. Preston lunged forward. Watch your mouth. Luna, my dog, who had been sleeping in the corner, stood up and let out a low, menacing growl. Preston froze. Sit down, Preston, I said, before I have you removed. You wouldn't dare, he spat. We're family. I am the captain of this vessel, I said. And right now, you are intruding on my peace. I looked at Dad. I have a ledger in my head, Dad. Want to review it? What are you talking about? Year 1, I said, holding up a finger. I turned 25. I spent it alone in a motel room, eating instant noodles. You posted a video of Preston's launch party, where you bought him a $5,000 camera setup. He needed it for work. Mom defended. Year 2, I continued. I got promoted to director. I emailed you. You didn't reply, but you co-signed a lease for his warehouse. It was a sound investment. Dad yelled. Year 3, I raised a third finger. I bought this boat. It was a wreck. I sanded the fiberglass until my lungs burned. I slept in the bilge. Where were you? Oh, right. You were vacationing in Cabo with Preston to celebrate his first year. We didn't know you bought a boat. Dad argued. Because you never asked. I shouted. My composure finally cracked. You never asked if I was alive. You never asked if I was hungry. You erased me. The silence rang across the water. And now, I lowered my voice to a whisper. Now you show up. Not to apologize. Not to meet the woman I became. But to strip mine my life to fill the hole he dug. I pointed at the gangway. Get off my boat. Dad didn't move. He sat there, his face turning a dangerous shade of purple. No, he said. Excuse me. I said no, Dad said. We are not leaving until you write a check. $52,000. That is the minimum. Consider it a loan if you have to, but we are not leaving this dock without it. It's not a request, Rowan. Preston added, crossing his arms. Dad spoke to a lawyer. Since you started this business while, technically, still under the family umbrella. I was 24. I laughed. I was an adult. We can sue you for familial support, Dad lied. I knew it was a lie because Harrison had briefed me. Florida doesn't have those laws for adult children supporting parents unless they are destitute, and they weren't, yet. Go ahead and sue, I said. My lawyer is on speed dial. He'd love to eat you for lunch. Mom stood up, changing tactics. She walked toward me, arms open. Rowan, baby, look at me. I didn't back away, but I stiffened. I know we made mistakes, she said, her voice trembling. I know we were focused on Preston. But boys need more help. You were always so strong, so independent. We didn't worry about you because we knew you could handle yourself. It was the most insidious insult of all, penalizing me for my competence. Because I was strong, I didn't deserve love? I asked. Not that, she said, reaching for my hand. But look at you now. You have so much. You have this beautiful yacht. You have a business. God has blessed you. Can't you share that blessing? If Preston loses the business, he might do something drastic. He's fragile. He's 31 years old, Mom. I snapped, pulling my hand away. He's not a child. He's a grown man who played business with Daddy's money and lost. Let him fail. It's the only way he'll learn. You want him to fail, Preston said, his voice dripping with venom. You're jealous. You've always been jealous of me. I pity you, I said. That broke him. Preston screamed and kicked the cockpit table. It overturned, shattering a glass vase I had there. Luna barked wildly. That's it, I said. I pulled my radio from my belt. Security to slip 42. Immediate assistance required. I have 3 trespassers refusing to leave. Dad stood up, his fists clenched. You called security on your own father? I called security on a stranger who is threatening my crew, I said. You ungrateful brat. Dad shouted. I should have. Should have what? I stepped closer to him. I was taller than him now, or maybe he had just shrunk. Should have loved me? Should have noticed me? Too late, Silas. Two security guards, big guys named Mike and Dave, who I brought coffee to every morning, came jogging down the dock. Captain Reynolds? Mike asked, eyeing Dad. Everything okay? These people are trespassing, I said. Please escort them off the marina property and ensure they do not return. You can't touch me, Preston yelled. I'm a guest. Revoked, I said. Sir, you need to come with us, Mike said, his hand resting near his belt. Dad looked at the guards, then at me. He saw the resolve in my eyes. He realized, finally, that he had no power here. The patriarchy didn't float on my dock. You're dead to us, Dad spat. Don't bother coming home for Christmas. Don't bother calling when you fail. I already failed to get your attention for 5 years, I said. And look where it got me. Success. Come on, Mom. Preston grumbled, grabbing his suitcase. She's crazy. We'll find another way. Mom looked at me one last time. She looked at the yacht. You have a cold heart, Rowan. It's not cold, Mom, I said. It's just waterproof. They turned and shuffled down the gangway. Dad struggled to put his shoes on while standing on the dock, hopping on one foot, looking ridiculous. Preston dragged his suitcase, cursing under his breath. I watched them go. I watched them walk past the security gate. I watched them get into a taxi. When the taillights disappeared, I felt a strange sensation. My knees gave out. I sat down on the deck, right amidst the shattered glass of the vase. Luna came over and licked my hand. I didn't cry. I started to laugh. It was a shaky, ragged laugh, but it was real. I had done it. I had faced the monster under the bed, and it turned out to be just a sad, greedy old man. My phone buzzed. A text from Beatrice. Beatrice, did they come? Me. They came. They asked for money. I kicked them out. Beatrice, good. The trash took itself out. I'm proud of you. I swept up the glass. I cleaned the deck. I poured myself a glass of cold water. The sun was setting, painting the sky in purples and oranges. The water lapped gently against the hull. The Resilience creaked softly, a comforting, solid sound. I was alone. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't lonely. I was sovereign. The fallout was swift and brutal, but not for me. Harrison filed a restraining order the next day, citing Preston's aggressive behavior and the destruction of property, the vase. They were legally barred from contacting me or coming within 500 feet of the marina. 2 weeks later, the news filtered down through the grapevine, Aunt Beatrice. Preston's suppliers lost patience. They sued. His inventory, boxes of cheap plastic junk, was seized. He declared Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Mom and Dad weren't so lucky. Because they had co-signed the business loans and leveraged the house, the bank foreclosed. They lost the house I grew up in, the house where I was ignored. It was sold at auction to pay off the debts of the golden child. They had to move into a 2-bedroom apartment on the wrong side of town. Dad had to come out of retirement and take a job as a greeter at a hardware store. Mom had to start cleaning houses. The irony was not lost on me. As for Preston, he moved into their living room, sleeping on the couch, blaming the economy, blaming the bank, blaming me. He started a podcast about toxic families, where he painted himself as the victim. It has 12 listeners. I blocked every number. I changed my email. I scrubbed the last traces of them from my life. Business on the Resilience boomed. The story of this self-made captain got around town, thanks to Beatrice. People love an underdog. We were booked solid for 6 months. I hired a 3rd crew member. I started looking at buying a catamaran. One evening, about a month after the incident, Harrison came by with the final legal paperwork. The restraining order was permanent. You're free, he said, handing me the file. It feels strange, I admitted. I spent so long running from them. Now, there's nothing chasing me. That's called peace, Rowan, Harrison said. He reached out and took my hand. His skin was warm. Now you get to decide what to run toward. I looked at him. I looked at the fleet I was building. I think I'll just sail, I said. For a while. 5 years ago, I left a key on a counter and walked out into the dark. I had $200 and a hole in my chest where my family should have been. Today, I stand on the flybridge of a 40-foot yacht that I restored with my own bleeding hands. I have a bank account that is mine. I have a dog that loves me. I have an aunt who sees me. I have a lawyer who might become more than a lawyer. People talk about family like it's a magic word, like it excuses abuse. like it demands endless forgiveness. I learned the hard way that blood is just biology. Family is behavior. My family is Elias, who taught me to tie a knot. My family is Beatrice, who told me to run. My family is the crew that scrubs the decks with me side by side. I watched the sunset turn the ocean into liquid gold. I thought about Dad, greeting customers at the hardware store, bitter and angry. I thought about Mom, cleaning someone else's toilet, crying about bad luck. I didn't feel happy about their suffering. I just felt detached. They made their bets. They bet on the wrong child. I started the engines. The rumble of the diesels vibrated through the soles of my feet, the heartbeat of the resilience. I cast off the lines. I steered the boat out of the slip, past the breakwater, and into the open ocean. So, looking at the empty dock where they used to stand, I have to ask, was I wrong to choose my peace over their bankruptcy? Or did I finally pay them back exactly what they gave me? Nothing. Thank you so much for listening to Rowan's story. That was a heavy one. I want to hear your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Rowan was too harsh, or did the family get exactly what they deserved? Type Team Rowan or Team Family below. And if you enjoyed this story, please smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. We post new stories every day. See you in the next video.